All right, good afternoon to you once again. We do return, and I want to take you back to Parliament where your monies, the ones that you serve with the National Social Security Fund, we want to know, where is it? Is it even still there? Someone asked me this morning. Where the Select Committee of Parliament is interfacing with some of the officials, some not from NSSF. Ubra is one of those that they had this afternoon. We also had Job Richard Amatua, who's a whistleblower, to understand really some of the queries that are coming out of that institution. The gentleman is still speaking. Let's hear him spit some facts.
I said earlier, because of the new vision information which came before, I had already made my mind to petition, and I had already drafted my petition. But then I needed to have certain information. I did not read all the document, to be very precise with you. I did not have that time, because I had already drafted my petition. I just needed something to back myself up. I had already been convinced by the information, which was detailed by New Vision.
Finally, some of the documents you submitted to us are from Ministry of Finance. Why did you, in your wisdom, why did you only choose to write to the Ministry of Gender and not the Ministry of Finance, considering that for a long period, some of these correspondences, because the fund was being managed directly under Ministry of Finance, why did you not write to Ministry of Finance and you chose only to write to Ministry of Gender?
Thank you very much for that question. Previously, NSSF was under Ministry of Labor before it went to Finance. And I had done my research. By the way, it took me 5 years to research about NSSF. 5. I had already done my research. In fact, I had even tried to make contact with the former minister who's in the USA to explain to me what is happening. So I wrote because the law which this parliament passed put NSSF under Ministry of Labor. So that was my wisdom.
You have not answered my question.
Yes. Why did I not write to the Ministry of Finance?
Why didn't you write to the Ministry of Finance?
Because
and maybe, colleague,
yes,
to help our witness,
yes,
before the new law came in place,
yes,
the supervision that was under Ministry of Finance had taken 10 years.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So in your research is within even the 10 years. So finally, you want information earlier than 10 years and you don't want the recent 10 years?
Supplementary before you answer. I think
there are too many questions and you want him to give a response. Can he respond to those, then you ask the next question?
It was my wisdom to go to Ministry of Labor because that is the only ministry where there is a structure existing. That is the only ministry where there is a structure within the ministry, Department of Labor, where NSSF is fitted. That was my wisdom. For sure, I did not. I only copied the Ministry of Finance. I only copied the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance.
Finally, on my side, Chair, in your petition, one of the strong grounds you raise is the mandatory retirement age of 60 years.
Yes.
So in your petition to the Prime Minister, why did you only focus on Mr. Byarugaba and you did not mention Mr. Ayota? And yet Mr. Ayota is older than Mr. Byarugaba.
Wonderful question. Honorable Chair and Honorable Members of Parliament. I wrote focusing on the issue of Mr. Byarugaba because the letter of the Prime Minister to the Minister for Gender was specifying that she should reappoint Mr. Richard Byarugaba. So the Prime Minister did not write about Mr. Ayota. So I was very specific.
Chair. Honorable Baka.
Chair, our witness wrote to the Right Honorable Prime Minister on 15th December and attention Minister of Gender to stop reappointment of Richard Byarugaba.
Yes.
And on the same date is when the Minister of Gender wrote to Byarugaba, should we assume she did it basing on your letter?
I don't know, because her action, the individual actions are not mine, so I cannot commit to that. I don't know. Thank you.
Mr. Job,
Yes.
2 weeks before you petitioned,
Yes.
and you need to answer this very carefully,
Yes.
did you meet the Honorable Minister anywhere? Be very careful, you're on oath.
Thank you very much. 2 weeks before I petitioned, did I miss the Honorable Minister anywhere? No.
Okay. Any other questions?
Chair, to add on that one,
Yes.
have you met the minister or been in contact with the minister directly?
I only met the minister when I went to get the response to my letter and the document. Thank you.
On 7th December, I don't know if you have that letter. Actually, you do, because it's part of your evidence, the deferral letter on the appointment. I don't know if you don't have it. The deferral of the appointment of the MD was done on 7th December. Okay, according to the information, the letter that they wrote to the board chairman from the minister. Let me finish.
Okay.
The minister wrote to the board chairperson and stating that there was a whistleblower, and part of the grounds I've talked about, what the minister has talked about, they are part of the grounds you're basing on corruption, mismanagement of funds, on 7th December. That is the minister's letter. But then you wrote to the minister on 14th December. So you believe that the minister assumed you were going to petition when she was making that deferral, because her letter talking about the petition, the whistleblower and that information happened before you had written to her.
Thank you very much for that wonderful question, Honorable Masaba. There were already petitioners before. By the way, I'm not the only petitioner. I don't know why I became the famous petitioner. Maybe by chance, natural selection. There were petitions from the procurement department of NSSL. Petition by NOTU. I said that. So my petition came later when Right Honorable Prime Minister had now written on 7th of December. By the way, Right Honorable Prime Minister, the letter is dated 7th of December. It leaked to the media later. Then a New Vision ran a bold story about the clash in the ministry. So as a cadre, I had to intervene to understand really what is happening with my people. So my petition, I don't think is the basis of Honorable Minister's letter. Because mine came later. There were other petitions before. The only disadvantage, I'm sorry, the only disadvantage is that I became the famous petitioner. I don't know how, Honorable Chair.
We are raising this because we've not got any information from any other petitioner. The minister has not brought to us, to our attention, any other information from any other petitioner, because that is what we'll use as our basis. So you're the petitioner we have. That is why we are asking for your clarity on these issues.
I think it would be fair if this committee could summon the petitioners, especially that one. I have a lot of interest in that petition which came from the procurement department.
So can you look at your letter to the minister and clearly state on record which document that the minister gave you?
Oh, thank you very much. Can I read the whole letter in verbatim?
You're talking about the documents you requested. I
So
want
should I
from
only
those
state the documents?
I want you to state the ones that the minister gave you.
Petitions regarding NSSF mismanagement from COF to NOTU, NSSF staff were given to me. Those three were given to me. And I attached them here as my annexure. They're the list of my evidences. That's one. So about the latest affairs of the report, this one we concluded it. I did not get it.
No, you put it clearly that you did not get it.
I did not get it. I did not get it. Disciplinary related correspondences between the board, Mr. Richard Biarogaba, and your office, this one I got. I think my Annex A is a disciplinary correspondence which I really relied on, the evidence of Mr. Pius Bigirimana. That one I got. Documents regarding fraud and embezzlement in NSSF. This one I did not get because they were already part of the petition from procurement department. They were already attachments or part of the petition from procurement. So then retirement notices from MOD and deputy MOD, these two I got. And I also, I think it is the annex H and I, no annex, yeah, they're part of my annexes of the list of evidence that I filed. Thank you very much.
Mr. Job, have you ever communicated with Mr. Owere on WhatsApp of recent?
Thank you very much. Actually, before I came here, I had already been informed about the ongoing proceedings here and that Mr. Owere was here accusing me. I want to give information to this wonderful parliament and the truth. Mr. Owere is the former Chairman General of NATO. And in NATO, there is a war. So Mr. Owere was impeached by his union people.
Order, Chair.
Yes. Order.
Mr. Chairman, you have asked the witness a very straight question that required a very straight answer. But the way he's responding is taking us to things that are not related to the question. Is he in order?
Honorable Chair.
Mr. Job, I've not even made a ruling.
Honorable Chair.
Can you kindly
please switch off your microphone?
Mr. Job, it is a very simple question. Have you communicated with Mr. Owere on WhatsApp?
The answer is yes. And I wanted to explain for you how it came about. I want you to benefit from the detail of this information. There's the information which you need to have.
Mr. Job,
yes.
Can you read for us or tell us the communication that you had with him? We want you to put it on record.
Now, you see, it would be
And please stop it. I will not waste any more time for another reconciliation effort. Thank you so much. Mr. Owere writes back. You are the one who is messing up. You are not coordinated. How can you get information from the minister? You write back. My brother, we are on top of this game. Trust me, there is nothing illegal we did in pursuit of the interests of workers. Is this the actual conversation?
Honorable Chair, I want to confirm that that is a true conversation between me and Mr. Owere. Allow me to explain.
Okay. Can we allow him to explain?
Please. Honorable Chair, there is a war in NATO where Mr. Owere was impeached. Now, when Mr. Owere was impeached, in his wisdom, it is the Honorable Minister for Labor who was behind it. Mr. Owere held a press conference, which is in public, condemning the Honorable Minister. Now, I was approached by Chairman General of UPSTU. UPSTU is written UPSTU. Uganda Professional Science Teachers Union, the Chairman General, Mr. Elongo Vincent. Mr. Elongo Vincent approached me when Honorable Owere was now in the media attacking the Honorable Minister, Betty Among. Mr. Elongo approached me that the troubles Mr. Owere was going through in his union. So Owere with the Honorable Minister, because this man, then he explained to me that this man had done something good for the workers. He's not a bad man. Remember, Chairman General of now. Indeed, I summoned, I called Mr. Owere. After calling Mr. Owere, I met Mr. Owere at a Teak Hotel He came with somebody, and I went with my political chief strategist. We met at Tiki Hotel. From Tiki and Timunyole, actually is behind my excellence. You understand? That's why I'm telling him that I will not commit again to do another reconciliation. You get me? Now what happened? So I then reached to the minister on phone. I pleaded with the minister that, please, I am seeing you people aware and...
when did you reach the minister on phone?
I cannot state the time. I cannot remember the time.
You can tell us the month or the date when you expect. When you try to recall, maybe the month.
The month. It is still that same month when I communicated, I had a press conference accusing the minister of trying to take 6 billion. So,
Mr. Matua.
Can you allow me first finish this, then you'll ask me?
No,
Honorable Chair.
Mr. Matua.
Honorable Job.
Yes.
Mr. Matua.
Yeah, kindly, but that is the last question. Let's stop interrupting him, but
yes.
First receive that question.
The minister.
Yes.
It was before I brought the petition. He did with the minister that please, this Owere is in our party. These unnecessary wars are not good. What is this? Please reconcile with Owere. Owere reached the minister, and indeed they reconciled.
Mr. Job, you have committed perjury already. You stated that you had not talked to the minister until the day of the petition. You have just stated that during the reconciliation,
yes,
you were in touch with the minister. This contradictory statement is perjury. It means you are telling lies to this honorable committee.
Can you allow me finish this explanation?
Honorable members, how do you want to proceed?
Like you have rightly said, Mr. Matua, a few minutes ago denied the fact that he had had contact or had met the minister before the petition. Just a few minutes ago. And now he's the one telling us he was the chief reconciliation coordinator between Owere and the minister. By the time someone referred to you to be the one coordinating Owere and the minister, it means you had earlier had a record of close. Yes. That is already perjury. You have lied on oath. So in my view, Chair, we need to extract more information connected to this for the benefit of this committee.
Honorable Masawa.
Chair, I will differ a bit from my colleague since Mr. Matua has come out to give us information willingly. I believe it's high time we give him another chance to correct the record. Perhaps he could apologize to the committee for lying and let him give us the entire facts. When did you begin talking to the minister? How long have you been in touch with the minister? And you tell us the real truth about this, because that is the only way perhaps you'll get out clean from this. Okay. So you stop lying and proceed properly.
Chair, in respect of the submissions made by colleagues, I want to remind colleagues that the witness now has committed second time telling lies. The first one before he was under oath, now even under oath, we have discovered that he's now to him through you.
We are not asking.
He's going to be a reliable source given the inconsistencies I've noticed.
And therefore you would recommend?
I would recommend, like the previous colleague, that the CID takes over the witness for further investigation.
Honorable Baka.
Chair, I decided to keep quiet because what the witness is talking about in PH, what it seems to be said. One thing I wanted, which was posed by my colleague, is that I cannot wake up. I'm a senior citizen now, and somebody tells me, go and reconcile the minister, so and somebody. And unless we are so close, that's why members were asking you, for how long have you been close? To the extent that you can be even given some documents that you are not supposed.
Mr. Job, before I make a ruling, one of the members who begged that we give you an opportunity for the record, and this time we want the truth. When was the last time you communicated with the minister before you petitioned? And the security is going to extract all these details from your phone, including the call logs, before this petition. Kindly respond.
Thank you. Honorable Chair and honorable colleagues, not colleagues, please, agents of the late Speaker Jacob Olanya during the speakership election. During that time is when I came to know Honorable Betty Amongi. We were in a constant communication during the speakership election. That's what I can state on record. I've been in touch with her during that election because I was the head of media communication for the late speaker during the speakership campaign. So I can confirm here that I was in touch with the Honorable Betty Amonga earlier during our struggle, including even one of the relatives of the person who is here, so I don't want to state, who was also very core. The two nominated, if you are very careful, it was Honorable Betty Amongi and the Honorable the Colonel retired, Brighty Rwamirama, who nominated Jacob Olanya in Nambole. So I was in touch with the Honorable Betty Amongi.
Through you, Chair. Mr. Matua.
Yes.
We are members of campaign for that position.
Yes.
Perhaps you put it on record.
Yes.
The year or the month when you started doing this work and when you started getting in touch with the minister, because we can trace all this information. The CIDs are going to get us. We want you to put it on record when you started or when you got in touch with the minister. And if currently you're still in touch, when did you last talk to the minister?
You know, Mr. Job,
I wanted to answer the second question.
Just wait. You were in touch with the minister 2 weeks before the petition. Is this true or not? Because now...
True.
It is true.
Yes.
You met physically before you petitioned. Is this true or not? And be very careful, because I am going to make a ruling. We now think you can speak the truth. Should we detect any kind of lie?
Not 2 weeks before the petition. I met her. That day I went to pick my response together with the documents I requested for. And of course, after that, I submitted the petition. The fact is, I met her before I submitted the petition because I wrote to request for documents. That day, I went to get the documents, I met her. This is true.
Supplementary?
Yes.
You mentioned that you were approached by a member of
Mr. Longo.
Uganda Science something, who requested you to mediate between Mr. Were and the minister. And that was in December. Yes or no?
Yes.
Before you petitioned.
Yes.
Between Mr. Were and the minister.
Thank you very much. I did not even attend the reconciliation meeting personally. For me, what I only did is to communicate with the Honorable Minister on the phone, pleading with her to reconcile with Mr. Were.
So
Owere met her without me.
So before the 15th, when you went to pick the documents,
yes.
When you were approached to mediate between her and Mr. Were,
Yes.
in your conscience, from your earlier interaction with the minister, you also believed that you were best suited to do that job.
You know, I love my country so much, and I would want to solve any problem which my abilities can allow.
And indeed, she agreed with your call for a negotiation and reconciliation.
Yes, sir.
Meaning you were really close friends.
During the time of the speakership election, we came closer because I was a key leader.
And you continued interacting quite often.
Yes.
No more answers, Mr.
Chair, just one. I want him to put it on record.
Yes.
This petition, was it your idea or the idea of the minister given to you?
It was my idea, purely my idea.
Mr. Job, as Honorable Amos comes in those 2 weeks, did you receive a token of 6 million appreciation for the whistleblowing?
No.
Have you ever received a token of 6 million?
No.
Okay. Honorable Amos.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate your cadreship. Recently, you even featured on the Capital Gang, where you vehemently expressed your opinion. And someone saw you being helped. You were delivered at the offices of the...
With the border. Yes. I went there with the border.
Honorable
Chair,
Masao?
I'm just taking him back. You said you were the coordinator for the late speaker while he was contesting for the speakership race.
Yes.
Yes. And given that the speaker looks for votes among the members of parliament,
Yes.
and you were the media coordinator,
Yes.
perhaps can you give us more detail? What exactly were you doing? Because perhaps you have an alibi, someone you've worked with concerning media or members of parliament, because I've only got to see you after this petition, and most of us here. So you give us more information on that. What were you doing?
Thank you very much, my Honorable Masava. Indeed, my role was to defend my candidate against the massive blackmail that was sponsored by forces that be. So that was my role on Twitter, and I led a very courageous team, and we defeated the opponent.
Oh?
Yes.
When you started talking about these issues,
Yes.
you say you went to the studios by Boda,
Yes.
and what did you come back, what means did you use to come back from the studios? The same Boda?
I still use my same border. Even I
Okay.
came here today with border. He's waiting for me. Yes.
Do you know the vehicle, the official vehicle of the minister, Honorable Betty Amongi?
I have seen that in the Ministry of Gender that day when I went on 15th. It is a party on the left as you are entering.
When you were at the studios of Capital Radio,
Yes.
either entering or coming out, since for you used the Boda,
Yes.
did you see that vehicle there?
See. No. Because I spent some time there. After the talk show, I had to talk to my senior. That's the Honorable Lydia Wanyoto. You know, she's a SEC member and senior to me. I could not leave without talking to the senior. I also talked to Honorable Katesi, and I had wanted to talk to Mr. Sekatawa, but the media kept him busy. So I spent some time there before I exited.
Have you ever moved in that vehicle? Have you ever sat in that vehicle?
No. I've never moved with it, and I've never sat in it. It's a vehicle of the Honorable Minister. I'm not a minister. That would be very, very serious disrespect.
Honorable Baka, lastly.
Ndugu Kada,
Yes.
don't you think you have given us enough evidence? And we should say thank you for others also to come.
I leave that to you.
Chair, sorry to take you back. He said he saw the car of the minister parked somewhere on the Ministry of Gender.
The response.
You've said you've seen it parked something to do on the right, and you know it very well.
I was asked, have you ever seen that vehicle? My answer is yes. Where? I saw it on 15th when I went to pick the response to my letter.
How did you know it was for the minister, Betty?
Yes?
How did you know it was for the Minister of Gender, Betty Among?
The parkings are clearly labeled. If you go there in the parking yard, the parkings are clearly labeled. One for the minister and the other, because there are 6 ministers in that ministry. They are labeled. So I saw the label.
Now, the letter you wrote on 14th December 2022 to the ministry.
Yes.
Was received on 14th December.
Yes. And for your clarity, letters to the minister there, to their secretary. But for me, I took my letter to registry because I wanted that stamp received very much.
Okay, very good. You took this letter to the registry.
Yes.
But it still went to the minister, cabinet minister.
Yes.
The letter is addressed, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development.
Yes.
How did the registry know which specific minister you were referring to?
If you address a letter to a minister, then it goes to the senior minister. The rest are juniors.
So you went to the ministry,
Yes.
you went to the registry,
Yes.
you gave them a letter that was blank. It's written, Honorable Minister, not even cabinet, Honorable Minister. He's referring to Honorable Betty Among.
Honorable Chair, I have just answered.
And Honorable Betty Among, even after receiving this letter that had no address to which specific minister, writes back to you, but addresses it now to you personally.
Honorable Chair, for me, if you address a letter to a honorable minister, in fact, if I address a letter to you here, even if you have a vice chairperson, it will go to you, the senior. So, in my wisdom, the person in the registry did the right thing.
If you address the letter
Yes.
to chairperson,
Yes.
it will go to me.
Yes.
But if you address a letter to a honorable member and bring it to the registry here,
Yes.
how will the registry know that this letter is going to this minister?
Honorable Chair, the other question is not now mine. Maybe you can call the people in the registry to explain that to you.
Now, honorable member, the witness before us committed perjury, but we wouldn't want to set a precedent where we intimidate whistleblowers, or you are no longer a whistleblower because everyone knows you anyway. Where a petitioner fears to come to Parliament for fear of being arrested. It is upon us to look at whatever information we have received and whatever we have heard and see what is admissible and what is not admissible. It is upon that background I will not send Mr. Job to the CID because we wouldn't want people to fear to come and give information. However, Mr. Job, I will warn you, the next time you swear an oath and you lie, or should we discover that anything you have told us after this is a lie, the committee will make recommendations in as far as this report is concerned, and should they find you again guilty for the 3rd time, then you'll have committed. However, it's now 2:30 and we have not had lunch. You want to give your concluding remarks before we suspend? Kindly proceed.
Honorable Chair and the honorable members of this wonderful committee, I want to thank you very much for the ruling you have just made. I want you to understand the spirit of my action. I have acted in the interest of this country. And I can tell you, the committee, in its own wisdom, I am praying that you'll find some space to appreciate my courage. What I am doing here, not everybody can do. What I'm doing here, a degree cannot or PhD can allow somebody to do. It is the courage. It is the absolute courage, because I wanted my country get better. I really appreciate your ruling. And to the other members of the committee who have been following these proceedings, you have really been wonderful. I could see the sense of patriotism in you, in your interrogations of the issues. I am proud of you, and please, as you retreat to look into this issue, at the back of your mind should be Uganda, not any other person. Thank you.
Okay, as you go, maybe you can give us this last response. So the minister gave you documents regarding petitions and the rest. And you used the same documents to petition the same minister to block the reappointment of Yarugaba.
The person I petitioned was Right Honorable Prime Minister. The attention was just drawn. You know, I am good at a documentation process. My language teachers were very thorough. So, the person who is to reappoint Mr. Byarugaba is the Minister for Labor. But the person who was writing that you appoint the minister, you appoint Mr. Byarugaba was the Right Honorable Prime Minister. So I wrote to the Right Honorable Prime Minister with attention to the person to take action.
So how did you access the Prime Minister's letter?
It was published in the media, New Vision. In fact, it is one of my attachments of the, if you look at the attachment, it's one of my attachments to that thing. Yes.
As I say to my colleague, you have really shown the spirit of patriotism.
Yes.
You have started with NSSF. I don't know if in your program there are other departments of government where you are busy fighting corruption.
Honorable Chair, I had just tweeted, if you go on my page at Job Matua,
Always.
Explore, enjoy, and dance to the latest content, beats, and kawozi from Uganda and beyond. Simply go to your Play Store or App Store right now, find Afro Mobile, download it straight to your phone, and get started. Is it TV you want? Simply open the app, click on TV, select the channel you want, and watch live. Are you busy right now? Then check out On Demand or enjoy in your free time. Afro Mobile. The future is now.
Work, work, work. Work's over. Busy Biter, get down to snack business. When snacking is under attack, we'll be there to fight back.
They are in your food, in your water, in your gardens, and in the air you breathe. They are a nuisance in our communities and are hazardous to our bodies. Plastics are not just a government, but also a personal problem. They affect your children, your grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. They negatively impact generations. No matter who you are, where you live, or what you do, plastic pollution affects us all. Our environment, our responsibility. Taso Butonde. This message is proudly brought to you by Vivo Energy Uganda, Uganda Breweries Limited, Stanbic Bank, and NBS Television.
Sit
to transport to the wrong person? Here's how to reverse it with MTN Mobile Money. Dial *165#. Select My Account. Select Initiate Reversal. You will see your last 3 transactions. Select the transaction you want to reverse. Enter your mobile money PIN, and you'll get an SMS confirmation that the transaction has been blocked from being withdrawn. And that's it. Please note, only transactions that haven't been withdrawn can be reversed.
Only Sanyuka Prime brings you all the exciting action in the StarTimes Uganda Premier League. Watch over 150 live games, highlights, replays, and so much more StarTimes Uganda Premier League content. Breaks away, and it's a goal in! The StarTimes Uganda Premier League, only on StarTimes.
Brought to you by MTN, the official broadcast sponsor.
This week, U.S. President Joe Biden delivers his second State of the Union address to a divided Congress amid challenges on multiple fronts. We'll discuss U.S. domestic and foreign policy priorities and how they may affect America's global engagement. Also, I speak to Sudanese-British philanthropist Mo Ibrahim on the state of governance across Africa. How is the continent faring? We'll see what the Ibrahim Index reveals about governance in African countries. Straight Talk Africa starts now. Hello there and welcome to Straight Talk Africa. I'm Haiti Adams. We are coming to you from our studios in Washington, D.C., where U.S. President Joe Biden delivered his second State of the Union address Tuesday evening to a divided Congress, touting his accomplishments and laying out the challenges the U.S. faces at home and abroad. Now, in a speech that emphasized global threats to democracy, Mr. Biden said the United States and the world stand at an inflection point in history. And now for a closer look at the State of the Union address and the U.S. President's domestic and foreign policy priorities, I'm joined by Johanna LeBlanc. She's the managing partner at J. LeBlanc Global Consulting. And joining us from Rabat, Morocco is Calvin Dark. Calvin, thank you for always joining us wherever you find yourself in the world, and a warm welcome to you as well, Johanna. Thanks to both of you. Johanna, I want to start out with you. What do you think of the State of the Union address we heard last night and what it said about President Biden's accomplishments and shortcomings, both at home and abroad?
I think President Biden's State of the Union address yesterday was excellent. I think that he was talking to the American people, explaining some of the challenges that he's faced, and also appealing to the American people that if you were to give me a second term, these are the things that I would accomplish, knowing that during this Congress will not be able to deliver some of his objectives. But some of his accomplishments have been, for example, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which has pushed out billions of dollars in building roads across the nation, providing broadband and providing access to the internet to countless people across this country. And also, Biden has been committed to police reform, which is why you had the George Floyd legislation, unfortunately, that was introduced in the House, passed in the House, but didn't go anywhere in the Senate. But also, I think it was an opportunity for Biden to also talk to the American people about running for a second term. I think in any given day now, we should expect that announcement. It will be more than likely he and maybe President Trump. We don't know who the Democratic Party is going to choose ultimately. But during his State of the Union address, there was a lot of humor, which I thought was very significant. For example, one of them was that when you talk about the bipartisan infrastructure bill, a number of cities across the nation and states received significant funding, and some of the Republicans did not vote for the legislation, but they went back to their cities and their towns and to brag about that they brought home the bacon, that they brought home resources to their constituents. So I think Biden talked about that and said, even though you did not vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill for some of our initiatives, but I'll be more than happy to come to your town and talk to your constituents.
And see you at the groundbreaking.
Absolutely.
Saying. Well, Calvin, of course, it's always in the interest of the party in power to tout their accomplishments. And as Johanna mentioned, you know, all the speculation around President Biden deciding to run again for a second term. What was your take on what you heard last night?
Well, you know, definitely we saw a President Biden that has a lot of energy for an 80-year-old. I think that was reassuring for a lot of the Democrats in the audience. And I think Biden's biggest challenge domestically was obviously he wanted to, and he did, tout the legislative wins, tout the economic progress. But what he tried to do, and I think he did a good job at it, was to make this case to the American people whose pocketbooks contradict that message. You know, and, you know, although Biden has the facts and figures and statistics on his side, it's still hard for some Americans to realize just how much our economy has improved. I also think that one of the things I was looking for is what are the possibilities of bipartisan cooperation? Now, I don't feel that they're any more likely after last night, but what I did see that I hadn't seen in Joe Biden in a long time was Senator Joe Biden, who knew how these caucuses work. When he did the ad-libbed comments that were not a part of his speech, that came from Biden, who spent decades in the Senate. I just hope we see more of that because he knows how it works. He knows what he's got to do. And I think if he does that more, he'll have an even more successful 2 years.
Yes, this was certainly interesting, the ebbs and the flows in the speech last night. But, Johanna, there was a really emotional moment, or at least something that I found to be very emotional. I'm sure I'm not the only one. And this was when President Biden spoke about police reform, and especially what happened in the light of the death of Tyre Nichols. Now, for those who don't know, this young man was on January 7th. He was beaten by Tennessee police in Memphis to within an inch of his life. He died 3 days later, and President Biden invited Nichols' parents to attend the State of the Union address. Let's take a listen to what he said.
As many of you personally know, there's no words to describe the heartache or grief of losing a child. But imagine if you lost that child at the hands of the law. Imagine having to worry whether your son or daughter came home from walking down the street, or playing in the park, or just driving a car. Most of us in here have never had to have the talk that brown and black parents have had to have with their children. Bo, Hunter, Ashley, my children. I never had to have the talk with them. I never had to tell them if a police officer pulls you over, turn your interior lights on right away. Don't reach for your license. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Imagine having to worry like that every single time your kid got in a car.
Well, Johanna, I think this is probably one issue that many people across the African continent can relate to, police brutality. This is something in the country that I'm from, South Africa, and I know this is an issue in places like Kenya, in places like Nigeria, and many other places on the continent, this issue of police brutality. Here in the United States, Tyre Nichols' death has revived the call and the pressure on the Democrats and President Biden to do something on police reform. You spoke about this a little earlier. Why has nothing substantial happened on this measure just yet?
Well, it's a very loaded question, Haiti. But what we know for certain is that when it comes to the issue of police brutality in this country, historically we've seen more of white officers, inflicting harm on black men and black women in this country. In this case, it's rather different because you have black police officers who committed this act, right? So some are saying, is it really race, or is it just are these just bad cops? Well, unfortunately, race always plays a role in it, because the idea is that as a person of color, as a black person in America, your skin color is being weaponized, right? So before they see you, before you speak, your color is seen as a weapon. It's being threatened to certain people, right? And also, we've seen historically there hasn't been much accountability. Yes, there have been major significant wins when it comes to these civil suits. And priorities when it comes to Russia and China. Let's take a listen.
Putin's invasion has been a test for the ages, a test for America, a test for the world. Would we stand for the most basic of principles? Would we stand for sovereignty? Would we stand for the right of people to live free of tyranny? Would we stand for the defense of democracy? For such defense matters to us because it keeps peace and prevents open season on would-be aggressors and threatens our prosperity. 1 year later, we know the answer. Yes, we would, and we did. We did. I'm committed to work with China where we can advance American interests and benefit the world, but make no mistake about it. As we made clear last week, if China threatens our sovereignty, we will act to protect our country, and we did.
Well, Kelvin, the so-called Chinese spy balloon incident has been dominating headlines here in the United States. Republicans have criticized President Biden for letting the balloon float over the United States for days before actually shooting it down. How is the U.S. likely to respond to this incident?
Well, I think that's the major question, because there were a lot of influential Republicans who took this more politically than it should have been. You know, he wasn't shooting it down. They criticized him for that. And then when he did shoot it down, they said it wasn't done fast enough. So I think we have to separate out the politically motivated comments we hear that are meant to weaken Biden, particularly if he runs in 2024. We have to separate that from the legitimate criticism, because there are a lot of things that the Biden administration needs to explain. Why we weren't on top of this as we should. How long is it? When has this happened before? And more importantly, what do we have in place so that I don't get texts from my relatives in North Carolina about the balloon flying over my house? So that's what I think the Biden administration has to do. Unfortunately, a lot of the criticism we're seeing from the Republicans is purely political and not constructive.
Johanna, the president also talked about PEPFAR. This was, of course, introduced by former U.S. President George W. Bush 20 years ago. PEPFAR has saved tens of millions of lives, predominantly in sub-Saharan Africa. How significant and effective has PEPFAR been across the continent, very briefly?
Well, since 2003 up until 2021, we know the United States government has spent over $100 billion. And this program has significant support by Congress and bipartisan support at that. And as you know, Congress has the power of the purse. If Congress does not release the funds, no project no initiative could really move forward. But I think think that there has been some successes. Obviously, we look at places like Eswatini that was ravaged with HIV and AIDS at a period of time. We've seen the number has decreased. We look at South Africa, for example, as well. We see that the number has also decreased. But what we're also seeing is that there's been an increase in terms of infection, but it's a particular age group. We're looking at, I believe in South Africa, we're looking at 18 to 20 something, right? And that is problematic. So I think that there has to be a restructure, reshift on how to address this issue across the African continent, because what
HIV, especially in South Africa, a whole generation wiped out, and it affected our economies and our way of life. But Johanna LeBlanc, thank you very much, and Calvin Dock, thank you both for your time. I'll have you back on the show again next time. I do appreciate it. Well, still ahead here on Straight Talk Africa. The 2022 Ibrahim Index of African Governance is out. What does Africa's overall governance scorecard say? And how do African nations fare on gender equality, rule of law, as well as economic and political rights? Well, after the break, my conversation with Sudanese-British philanthropist Mo Ibrahim. He'll give us the context and the details. Don't go away. Stay with us.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linoch Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
You're with Straight Talk Africa. Welcome back. For over a decade now, Sudanese-British philanthropist Mo Ibrahim has been shining a light on governance in Africa. Every 2 years, the Ibrahim Index of African Governance provides comprehensive data and key insight into how well African countries are governed. The 2022 index report is now out. How well have African countries fared? What should we be worried about? And what should we feel optimistic about? I put those questions to Mo Ibrahim when he joined me via Skype from the United Kingdom. I began by asking him what the Ibrahim Index for African Governance measures, how it measures, and what it hopes to accomplish.
We believe governance is measurable. And instead of nice speeches and polemics, we need data, information. And what we try to measure is what we call deliverables. What is the job of the government? The government needs to deliver to the people, to deliver better health, better education, better infrastructure, jobs, security, rule of law. All these things are measurable. And what we try to do is to collect as much data as possible. We have over 40 organizations worldwide who supply us with their data. We go in and fill in the gaps in this data as well. The index contains some over 200,000 data points, and this is reduced into 4 main categories. One is security and rule of law, and one is economic opportunity, everything to do with the economy, and one is about rights, participation, and human rights, democracy, etc. And one is about the human development, health, education, gender issues, etc. These are the 4 main categories, and we try to produce that complete picture of governance at that point of time in Africa through data. And what we're trying to do is to produce tools to help develop policies, because without data, how can people really manage and govern a country? It's important to develop policies based on data.
And I've heard you say that without data, governments are essentially driving blind. And so the 2022 IIAG report is now out. Can you give us an idea of what your main finding was?
Right. What we try to look is at really the trends in governance. So we look at a period of 10 years, and what we see over the past 10 years is that governance in general in Africa has improved over the past 10 years. That's good news. But there is some issues also around that. Governance have developed for about 7 years, between 2012 up to 2019, and then in the last 3 years it stagnated. It sort of flattened, and that is worrying. Also, we noticed that most of the improvement really happened in 2 of the 4 categories, which is economic opportunities and human development. This should have been the driver pushing the performance of our governments forward. But at the same time, we see deterioration in 2 other categories. One is security and rule of law, and the other one is democracy and rights. Unfortunately, we started to stagnate, and we're ringing some alarm bells here. We need to pay attention.
And I want to delve a little deeper into what you show us some worrying trends. What, in your view, is the greatest concern that we should have right now?
We're really concerned about the situation of security and rule of law. This has been deteriorating over the last 10 years. So that makes our people less safe, and it is worrying. On participation and human rights and democracy, we see also stagnation there. Since 2019, over the past 3 years, we had 2 military takeovers, 8 coups in Africa in just 3 years. This is a worrying trend of military taking over, and we know what happened there. We see that the space for civil society is closing. That is also worrying to us. So we're really worrying about these main 2 issues: security, rule of law, and the issue of freedom and participation of our people.
And your report does show there have been 23 successful and attempted coups on the African continent since 2012. You list a dozen of countries affected there. And then there's this surprising statistic that almost 70% of Africans now live in a country where there is conflict, of course. And that is very alarming, because armed conflict and other violence, you say, is worse now than it was 10 years ago. What does that say about the continent's ability to meet the challenges of its own security?
That is a very, very good question. It is really an important issue we need to face. And the reason for insecurity and conflicts, I think there are 2 main reasons. One, of course, is failure of governance. Any conflict has roots in socio-economic situation, marginalization of communities, etc. And the way the government handles this conflicts. The other reason also is really out of our hands, which is climate change. Climate is causing problems in Africa. The 10 most affected countries in the world by climate change are all African countries. What that result in is some serious problems. For example, we have large communities which are essentially herders. People raise animals. They need to graze. And because of climate change, they lose the grazing lands. Then they move with their animals towards more fertile lands. But that is farmers there who trying to grow their own food. And obviously you can see the conflict between 2 communities, the farmers and the herders. That is essentially caused by climate change. But also, we probably don't handle, or some governments don't handle this properly, and that worsens the situation. So there is various reasons causing the conflict and security, but governance is really at the heart of this, how to manage that. And that's something we really need to do with it, and we need to find an African solution for it. And it is very sad to see some governments opt out to hire mercenaries from Russia, Wagner Group, etc., as it happened in 2 or 3 countries in Africa, which will do nothing to help security of our people.
You also mentioned some bright spots, though, reasons to be optimistic, and you mentioned some earlier, but especially around the issue of gender. I found that quite interesting and really showed the value of measuring. We advocate for these things, but it's very important to go back and actually measure our performance here. Gender, very interesting. How well are we faring on that score?
This is one of the bright spots really in the report. Gender really situation has improved